Good morning and welcome along to Friday's OTB AM. It's another huge weekend of sport and we're looking ahead to all of it over the next hour and a half or so. There's World Cup, there's GAA qualifiers, there's a big hurling Leinster final replay as well coming up on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. We'll be looking ahead to that as well. In the company of our resident GAA expert, Dave McIntyre, very good morning to you.
That's my latest tag, yeah. Lovely.
Well, we were considering who do we get on to talk about Gaelic football or hurling this morning, and we decided, you know what, we haven't had Dave McIntyre on OTB AM in a long time. We need his hot takes all morning, and sure enough, here you are, ready to present them.
Sure enough, here I am. I better come up with some.
You've been. We want to chat about your television habits at the top of the show this morning, because you were watching the golf yesterday, but there's also another TV show you've been catching up on heavily over the last couple of days.
I've no idea what you're talking about. You're trying to draw back the editorial curtain here, our little pre-live production meeting.
Well, I did say we would talk about it on air. So.
Yeah, I've been watching Love Island.
Yeah?
Yeah, I have. I find it a deeply insightful means to looking through the development of human relationships.
But that's deep. That's the deepest thing I've ever heard anybody say about Love Island. What?
It is fascinating.
But you've got you're kind of catching up on it. You're watching it almost like
way back. I hit the series link button about 3.5 weeks ago, before I went on my holidays. We were away for 10 days, so we've come back to just this huge build-up of Love Island episodes. And yeah, we could have just left it, but I thought, let's just watch a couple, and if it's worth sticking with, we will stick with it, and it has been worth it.
It's been a corker of a season, hasn't it?
It has. It's really good TV viewing. It's pretty lowbrow stuff. But look, at the end of a long, hard day of either working or looking after the boys, it's not a bad way to kill an hour over your dinner.
It's a good way to relax the brain. But like, I'm sure you were thinking, well, sorry, you haven't been watching it live, but I'm sure you saw the pandemonium on Twitter the other night when the England match went to penalties.
No, I've avoided all social media mentions of Love Island.
Right, okay, that's incredible.
Yeah, well, you see, nobody I would be following on Twitter would be making any reference to it. So I could be on Twitter, especially during a World Cup match, which I would generally be, and I could still get through a couple of hours of being on Twitter and avoid all mentions of Love Island. So nothing has been spoiled for me yet. Well,
I would advise you unfollow Brian Moore ASAP, the England rugby legend. I think he's big into it. It was last year's Love Island, really, that he was tweeting left, right and centre about. But no, it's fascinating as well that you're actually watching it like somebody would watch House of Cards or something, that you're watching it kind of like episode after episode after episode. It's remarkable. So glad to hear you're enjoying it. It is our generation's Big Brother, though. It is lowest common denominator.
Well, none of my friends are watching it, so there's no spoilers on WhatsApp or anything like that. So I'm in the clear from that point of view.
Yeah, it's probably a good way of watching it. If you've got any comments on Love Island or anything like that, you can tweet us this morning at Off The Ball, or you can comment on the stream if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube. We'll get to the back pages in a moment, but we will be talking golf throughout the morning. Of course, Nathan and Joe are up in Ballyliffin at the Dubai Duty Free Irish Open, and yesterday, of course, Dave, Padraig Harrington, what the hell happened? Amazing, 66-1 before the competition started, and even he was like, it's a links course, everybody, why the hell have you got me at such big odds?
Yeah, well, he's won 5 major events at links courses in his career, so no matter how his form may look going into the Irish Open or any links event for that matter, he has to be considered a possibility, particularly if he gets himself into contention. Like, he's won 2 Dunhills, he's won 2 Opens, and he knows exactly how to get the job done around these types of golf courses. So I wasn't surprised by how well he played yesterday, and it wasn't just a seamless, flawless 68. He had to grind as well. He had to hold a couple of big putts of par over the course of the round. He just looked pretty comfortable out there. And now he did do an interesting, those walk and talk chats with Tim Barter. Usually in and around the turn they do it. They're actually really good, because you're getting just the thoughts of a guy mid-round. It's not something you get in any sport, really. We would watch, say, top 14 rugby or New Zealand rugby or any rugby in the Southern Hemisphere, where they will get a player at half time as he's walking off the pitch, which is something you will never see over this part of the world. But this is the equivalent of like talking to a guy who's about to hit a free kick. What are your thoughts here? And he was saying, you know what, I do have certain thoughts in my mind at the moment when I'm standing over the ball, which is not a comfortable place to be. You don't want to be thinking about things other than the target when you're actually out there playing well enough. That might be your frame of mind when you're on the range, or if you're playing a practice round, but not when you're actually walking around with the card in your pocket. So that was interesting, but I loved watching him. I loved watching him play well. And I think everybody would love to see him win this weekend. It would be spectacular, because he hasn't won in so long now. And I mean, that win at the Honda Classic and the following year at the Portuguese Open just seems a long time ago. I think the Portuguese Open was 3 years ago now. So to see him back in the winner's circle, particularly this close to Carnoustie, would be pretty special.
Yeah, without question. And Rory, I mean, like, it's cliche at this point. It should be put into his like Wikipedia definition. Excellent from tee to green, and when he gets onto the green, he's struggling a little bit. It's annoying. It's really annoying because he is playing unbelievable golf off the tee and with an iron in hand.
Yeah, I think he's still the best player in the world with every club on the bag bar the putter, and he missed a very makeable putt on one. And I'm starting to get the feeling that if it doesn't click early in the round, it's not going to click later in the round. He won't find something mid-round. It reminded me of that putt for eagle he had on the second on the par 5 at the Masters. And it was an opportunity to take all 3 shots that Patrick Reed had taken as the lead into the Sunday out of the equation, and they would have been level walking to the third tee. And yeah, he made birdie on that hole, but he missed about an 8 to 10 footer for eagle, and he didn't hole another putt for the rest of the day. I think maybe 1 on the front nine. And yesterday, I think he had certainly 5 putts inside 10 feet on the opening 9. I'm not sure he made any of them.
Yeah.
And his 70 could easily have been a 64.
Easily. And like, he should have probably come off the course. What did he shoot, a 69, was it, a 70?
70,
He should have come off the course with a 69. Is it like the putt on the last as well?
Yeah, well, that just summed it up. I mean, he had 7 or 8 of those from that sort of range all day, and he may have made one of them. He did have one very good par save in the front 9.
Yeah.
And that was about it. And he made one for birdie, which was a slightly long, it might have been 14 or 15 feet, but if he was a world-class putter, he'd be in double digits in terms of majors at the moment. You saw that incredible stat from the Travellers Championship 2 weeks ago, where he led the field in shots gained tee to green, and he was ranked last in shots gained putting, and that just kind of sums up where he is at the moment. It must be so frustrating.
It has to be. But before we get to the papers, we may as well actually have a look at what Rory McIlroy was saying. He was speaking to the lads up at Ballyliffin after his round yesterday.
Just 3 off the lead. With the way you were striking the ball, with the amount of birdie opportunities, was that a good round that could have been a great round?
Yeah, I mean, it was a decent round. It definitely could have been better. But, you know, I guess I have to take the positives. I hit the ball much better from tee to green than I have done the last couple of weeks. I felt more comfortable out there with my swing, which only bodes well for not just this week, but obviously what's coming up down the road. So, you know, just need to get a few more putts to drop. That would be good.
You spent a lot of time, yourself and Harry, discussing putts, particularly around the turn. What are you trying to figure out on the greens?
Just the lines. I think, you know, this is the first time I've putted links greens in a while, and they're much more subtle than the greens that we play in the States. It's just one obvious slope usually. Most of the time in the States we're here, you know, you could have a 20-foot putt and you have maybe 4 subtle slopes. So just trying to, I guess, commit to a line, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but yeah, you know, I just need to commit to the lines that I'm choosing and just try to make good strokes.
Are you as confident as you'd want to be with the putter in hand?
No, but that can change. And not so much. I feel like I started it on my line for the most part today. I just didn't, you know, the ball just didn't go in. Some days it doesn't, you know, it does, you know. I held some good putts. I held a couple of good ones for pars. I made that good one on 12, but I'm going to need to hole a few more over the next few days if I want to have a chance.
Having seen the course now in competitive action, does it feel it can be particularly aggressive out there?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, there was times today where I maybe wanted to hit driver with the right wind direction, but I sort of just reined it back in a little bit, and the fairways are playing so firm. I mean, I'm hitting 2 irons over 300 yards out there, so it's not, you don't need to hit driver, but it's playing good. It's a proper links test. You know, if the weather keeps up like this, it's going to be really fiery at the weekend, and that'll be a good test for all of us.
Yeah, interesting stuff there from Rory McIlroy. He's on 2 under par and tees off at 8:20 this morning. He's 5 shots off Ryan Fox's lead, of course. Padraig Harrington on 4 under par heading into his second round. He tees off at 1:30. And Graham McDowell, of course, at 1 under as well. They're the 3 best of the Irish. McDowell underway at 1:20 this afternoon. It's interesting what Rory says there about the differences in the greens between the States and over here, that there's just more subtle differences over here. It's probably just more parkland courses over there that they're playing on the PGA Tour. They're artificially insane, some of those greens, whereas over here it's just natural crevices here and there. Yeah,
he's not holding putts in the States either, though, is he?
True, good point.
So it's a general issue that he's got. He's not winning often enough for the talent that he has. Like, even the more run-of-the-mill events, like, what is he winning? He won at Bay Hill. He won Arnold Palmer's tournament this year. That was his first win going back to the Tour Championship in September 2016, if my memory serves me correctly. That's not good enough for someone of his talent. He should be winning 3 or 4 of the regular PGA Tour events a year and probably a major a year. And it sounds like we're being uber critical of him, but it's just because we know how good he was when he was dominating the world in 2014, when he won those 3 events in a row, the Open, he won an Akron, and then he won the PGA Championship in 3 wins and 3 starts, won World Golf Championship and 2 majors. That's the kind of form we would love to see him display all the time. And it's still in him. You can clearly see the way he's striking the ball and the way he hit his irons off a lot of the tees yesterday. It's just sumptuous stuff. And Joe was walking with that 3-ball for the front 9 yesterday, and Matthew Fitzpatrick, who's like a Ryder Cup player and is one of the up-and-coming stars of the European Tour. Joe said just the discernible difference in the striking quality of the ball between McIlroy and Fitzpatrick. Now, Fitzpatrick had an off day, so yesterday probably isn't the fairest day to compare the 2 swings and their ball striking abilities, but Joe was saying that, you know, there's a very obvious difference. This guy is just world class, and if he could just get some putts to drop. Now, he's a streaky putter, but it's not streaking often enough at the moment.
Yeah, that's a good way of summing it up. We're going to get to John Duggan in a little while. We're also going to hear more from Ballyliffin over the course of the show. We're going to be speaking to Padraig Harrington. There's an interview with him coming up from his post round yesterday. Nathan was also chatting to him. And also we'll be playing you some of Joe's walking of the first hole with Shane Lowry, which he did on Wednesday at the Pro-Am. Some very interesting viewing there. But before all that, it's time for the back pages.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie. Championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
We'll start with the back page of the Irish Independent this morning. It is Congress to tackle venue row. This is Colin Keyes' story here, which is carried pretty much everywhere this morning. The news coming out yesterday afternoon that Donegal GAA did indeed sit down with Croke Park, and a solution was arrived at where there wasn't going to be anything changed this year, that potentially next year, once it comes to Congress, that there can be a new clause put into the Super 8 agreement whereby Dublin will be forbidden from playing in Croke Park for the Super 8s, or that they won't be able to use Croke Park for their home game. We don't know what the specifics of that may be, but the GAA have basically said nothing is going to be done about it this year, but we're well open to a solution next year. Yeah,
and I think Donegal themselves probably knew deep down that that would be the ultimate eventuality, that nothing was going to happen in 2018. The horse had bolted on that one. Congress had laid down their decision in 2017 and there were no objections to it at that stage. Now, I know I was watching the show yesterday and yourself and Ger were kind of teasing this out, and you kind of rightly made the point that the Super 8s as an entity, as a concept, it was just such a big deal that there probably wasn't either the time nor the inclination to really drill down into the detail and uncover any wrinkles that might have been in there. And it's no surprise that Dublin playing 2 games at Croke Park wasn't seen as a big deal at the time, or maybe wasn't actually seen at all, that no one really, it didn't twig with anybody that this was going to be a problem down the road. So I think it's fair from the GA to say, look, this is definitely something we'll look at when they actually have the capacity to change it in the rule book, which will be Congress 2019. And Donegal probably knew that. I don't really think they came to Croke Park with the realistic hope that they were not going to be playing Dublin, or at least they would have the choice not to play Dublin in Croke Park in that first game. It's patently unfair.
Yeah, it is.
And it does damage the integrity of the Super 8s as a concept, and it will change. Now, you kind of listed 2 options there, one of which that Dublin wouldn't play their Croke Park game in Croke Park, or that they wouldn't nominate Croke Park as their home venue. It'll definitely be the former. Like, it can't be the latter, where there's no alternative to Croke Park for Dublin as their home venue. You can't send them to Parnell Park for a Super 8s match. Well, you just can't do it.
It would fly in the face of everything Kieran Kilkenny was saying the other day at Croke Park, saying that the reason why we play our home games in Croke Park is for all the boys and girls in the county to actually come and take advantage of the 82,000 capacity and see their heroes in action, which is fair enough.
It's absolutely fair. And Kieran Kilkenny is one of the most genuine, sincere guys out there.
He is,
and whatever he says, you can pretty much take at face value. It would just be a ridiculous scenario for 40 or 50,000 people not to be able to go and watch Dublin play an All-Ireland quarter-final. It would just be utterly nonsensical. So their home venue will be Croke Park forever when it comes to the Super 8s. But the one you can tweak is that, do you change the wording to a neutral venue for the Croke Park game? Maybe that's a ruling that could be changed primarily just to cater for this situation involving Dublin.
Well, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. I know it seems like kind of one rule for Dublin and one rule for everybody else, but is that not fairness? I think that is, as odd as that may seem, the small caveat of saying all games to be played in Croke Park, despite the situation where Dublin proceeds to the Super 8.
Well, it's fair to have one rule for everybody else and one rule for Dublin, because Dublin are the only team that will be playing there twice.
Exactly.
I would just hope that we will not be in a situation whereby that if you change the wording from every team gets a home game, an away game and a Croke Park game to every team gets a home game, an away game and a game at a neutral venue, that will not lead to a situation whereby some counties will not get their Croke Park game. I would not want to see that happen, particularly if you look at some of the counties that made the quarterfinals in the last decade. I'm talking Sligo, Clare, Limerick, Fermanagh, Cavan. For them to be denied their Croke Park game really would be a travesty, because they don't make the quarterfinals every year. Each of those counties I've just mentioned have only ever made the quarterfinals once. So maybe Sligo more than once, going way back into the early days of the qualifiers. So
I can see your point. And it is an important facet. It is why ultimately all the quarterfinals were moved to Croke Park, essentially. Also because they could get double headers and they could probably get a capacity of over 50, 60,000 in some cases with big double headers, for example.
Plus the caveat of getting to the All-Ireland Series is that you play at Croke Park. It goes all the way back to 2001 when Roscommon beat Galway in the Connacht Championship, and they were, fate would have it, they were back together as a pairing in the All-Ireland quarterfinals, and it wasn't played in Croke Park. And Roscommon, their reward for winning the Connacht title and beating the eventual All-Ireland champions of that year was to be dragged back down by Galway, and they didn't even get to do it at Croke Park, and that was a disgrace at the time, and it hasn't happened since. And you have to be able to play in Croke Park if you earn the right to make it all the way to the All-Ireland Series. And so if the GAA were deciding, if the CCCC were deciding where this neutral venue is, it would be within their remit to decide maybe if two smaller counties are paired together for the Croke Park game or the neutral game. Well, why send them to Croke Park? Why don't we put them in O'Moore Park or Clones or Tullamore? I don't think that would happen, but I really hope that changing the wording from Croke Park game to a neutral venue will not see some counties miss out on their day in Croke Park.
Yeah, we're going to be chatting about this throughout the morning, I dare say. Get your comments into it off the ball on Twitter, or comment on the stream if you're watching it on YouTube or Facebook. We'll come back to this story as well in a little while. It's on the front of the Independent and carried elsewhere as well this morning. Steroids warning for parents after death of teenager. Now, this is the death of Luke O'Brien May, who passed away according to a coroner's report this week, that basically the drug stanozolol was in his system. It led to swelling in the brain, and which caused his death, which is an absolutely tragic situation. It brings into focus as well the use of illegal performance-enhancing drugs, and there has been a huge amount of warnings here by Dr. Robert Plant and Assistant State Pathologist Dr. Margaret Balser in the last 24 hours to tell us all about this, something that is pretty... It hits home pretty hard. As I say, we'll talk about this in a little while, Dave, but he died last year at the age of 18. He played rugby, football, hurling and basketball, and it's just like it kind of changes the whole perception from talking about steroids as an illicit substance where you better not get caught to an illicit substance where there is life-threatening capacity here. And when you look at some of the figures in this, it's absolutely incredible with the amount of these illegal substances that are actually in the country, and it's a grim story, Dave. We will come back to it before the end of the show when we've got a little bit more time. Moving on to the rest of the sports stories this morning on the front page of the Irish Examiner sports section. It is the outsider. There is 66 to 1 shot Harrington making good on pledge to be open value bet. You've also got quality quarters. It's Mbappe versus Suarez, Neymar versus Hazard as thrilling World Cup reaches fever pitch. And on the back page of the Times, it's Padraig Harrington as well. But it's McIlroy's quote saying, "I'm back in form." Something he's been saying, and he's been quoted as saying quite a lot over the last couple of weeks, saying that he is back in form. He's just not finishing as well as he would have liked. And Croke Park row prompts GAA review. That's Kieran Gallagher writing there about the Donegal versus Dublin Super 8 situation. Leading the way in the Irish Times then this morning in terms of sport is the World Cup. Defining test for Belgium's golden generation, writes Emmett Malone in Kazan, but Brazil manager Chiche is confident his side have achieved the right balance. We'll be going over to John Duggan in Kazan in the next few minutes. Dave, you're looking after the tabloids this morning?
Yeah, first up for me, it's the Herald, the front page of the Herald Sports Supplement today. In Pog We Trust, Lowry hails the impact of the United midfielder. He's been, the Tottenham goalkeeper that is, has been speaking about how much of a leader Paul Pogba has become. And the Punt is, which is their racing section, imaging step up for Wednesday. So Dermot Weld endured a pretty hard season last year when his horses just never got the chance to show their real potential, as the opening paragraph of that piece from Niall Cronin. In the Mirror Sport this morning, the Fox Hunters. I like that one. Rory and Wiley, Old Harry, put leader in their sights. It was a surprise leader, Ryan Fox, after day one of the Irish Open up in Donegal. But as we've already been discussing, Pádraig Harrington well placed in 4 under par, and Rory McIlroy 2 shots further back after a 2 under par 70, which really should have been so much better given how well he hit the ball. Another reference there, double DUBLE or quits with the Super 8s. We've already talked about the potential change at Congress next year to Dublin playing twice at Croke Park in the Super 8s.
Are you envious of not getting the invite to Ballyliffin this year? I'm sure you got the invite, but you just politely declined. You said it was too far up the country for you or something.
It was just never really a runner. There was a discussion with Nathaniel Nate Dog Murphy, but I was up in Port Stewart last year, and I obviously have to be back for GAA commitments on Saturdays and Sundays during the summer, so it was a long drive. I think I went up on Wednesday last summer. We had a great couple of days. We had a really good evening on the Thursday night, I think, as I recall. I can't remember, it was Thursday or the Friday. There's generally sort of a media evening, and we had great fun. And we were in Port Rush and everything that year, but kind of have to point the car in the direction of home either on the Friday night or the Saturday morning to get to a GAA venue somewhere, possibly with a bit of a head on you. It's no fun.
I've heard everybody who's approaching the hut up there is asking, where's Dave McIntyre? It's hashtag friend of the pod on the outside, and it's only Dave, or it's only Joe, Nathan and Fionn Davenport up there.
I haven't been on the pod for quite some time, so it would surprise me if that question was still being asked.
Well, you know, stranger things have happened, Dave. Stranger things have happened.
What am I looking at here? I'm looking at the Irish Daily Star. Go for the Kyle. I guess it's more go for the kill. It's Kylian Mbappe. Didier backs Mbappe. I can't wait to see Kylian Mbappe up against this Brazilian defence tonight. Go for the kill. I like the headline. I like it even more if he actually gets the job done against the Uruguayan defence tonight, a defence that's only conceded 1 goal. That could be pretty good now. It could be very interesting to watch. Heartbreak for Vardy as well. It looks like he might actually be missing out on this quarter-final against the Swedes. That groin probably picked up against Colombia. There
was some paranoia that Jamie Vardy basically was injured the other night because he didn't want to take a penalty, but that's clearly not the case.
Unless this is being extended to the point where, look, this charade has to continue. You can't possibly play a part in this game after what's gone on, but yeah, no, takes the penalties for Leicester, and it was a surprise that he didn't hit one. But if you have any doubt in your mind, given the pressure and the stakes, about your physical capacity to hit one, you probably shouldn't.
No, it's true, especially given the entire situation, the mental situation when it comes to England. Like, it's been so well written about at this point, about the success of the penalty shootout last week, but ultimately we've been talking for the last 48, 72 hours about this magnificent coming of age for England, despite the fact that if Carlos Bacca hit his penalty shootout just a couple of inches lower, it would have all been very, very different.
Yeah. The narrative is basically, it's based on how it's gone. And, you know, history rewards the winners in sport. And you're right, it smacks the crossbar. A couple of inches lower in England are probably out, and everyone's pointing the finger at them for many reasons. But you would say, well, it's the same old woes for England, the same old issues coming back to haunt them when it comes to shootouts. But you have to say all 5 England penalties were excellent. Like, even the one they missed, Jordan Henderson's penalty was pretty good. It was almost into the corner. Nice height for the keeper, in fairness, but the keeper decides to go the other way. It's a brilliant penalty.
Yeah, sure. The thing is, had they lost that penalty shootout, I'm saying the narrative would be completely flipped. That people would be saying, I thought Gareth Southgate was working on penalties with his guys. Did you not see Jordan Henderson juggling the ball up the pitch? That's not the sign of a man who's been instructed how to take a penalty correctly or how to keep his head. Like, it would be a complete, like, we know how volatile some of the press has been around England and in terms of their celebratory headlines around them the other day. So you can only imagine what it would have been like had Henderson actually been the fall guy here, because those pictures of him juggling the ball up the pitch would have been like iconic for years to come in a very depressing way for him.
But that's just the way sport is. Look, you look at, we've spoken so much about Mayo and the aftermath of the defeat in Newbridge, and bar 1 or 2 little moments here and there, 2 own goals in one half of an All-Ireland final, you know, the margins are so tiny. Mayo could have emerged from this decade with 2 or 3 or 4 All-Ireland titles. Instead they've got none. Dublin have won, what, their 5 All-Irelands by cumulative, is it 7 points they've won their All-Irelands by? Didn't they beat Kerry by 3 in 1 year, and the rest were all won by a single point?
Yeah, and that one...
So it's like 5 finals and you've won them by 7 points.
Yeah, like it's true, and it's that you can kind of use that in terms of the kind of death rights that have been written about Mayo all week. And it's like, well, they're not actually finished. They're actually going to be, you'd imagine, quite close to being an almost top 2 team again next year.
And there's a very good piece by Paul Rice to that exact effect on the back page of the sports supplement of the Examiner this morning, where he's lists out some very logical reasons why this need not be the end of this Mayo team. Most notably the fact that pretty much a third of their team were not either there at all, or in the guises of Cillian O'Connor and Lee Keegan probably weren't anything close to full fitness or match championship sharpness as they would normally be come this stage of the season. The Irish Sun, moment of truth. Garrett, be honest over injuries. So he's telling his players to make sure they don't pull the wool over his eyes when it comes to them wanting desperately to play, but maybe they shouldn't. So only they'll know what's going on inside their camp. Super Pooper, that's the headline from the Sun on the Dublin Donegal Super 8 Croke Park as a venue situation. The Irish Daily Mail this morning, Rory all fired up, but putting holds McIlroy back. Myself and Owen have chatted about that in detail already. And the GAA dismissed Donegal's Croke Park objection. Moving on to the English papers. Stellar collisions, World Cup stars all set for quarter-final battles, and Southgate on his guard against players disguising their injuries. This is clearly a thing. Obviously, it's come up in yesterday's press conference. Gareth Southgate has been asked about it.
All right, I didn't know that.
He's obviously worried about. He's obviously worried about players maybe disguising any issues physically they may have. He says the lads would always be prepared to risk injury for these games, but that can't be at the detriment of the performance. Oddly enough, when it gets to these games, they're not always as honest as they might be about how fit they are.
Yeah, it's true. Because especially when you go through 120 minutes, and I understand you get a fourth sub for extra time, it is like a commodity having substitutes at that point. Like if somebody goes off early injured, that's I wouldn't say equivalent to a sending off, but it's the next worst thing that could happen, especially if you're going to go to the long haul, which England-Sweden very well could do yesterday. Yeah. If you've got an injury and a guy coming off after 20 minutes in a game that's got another 100 minutes to go, you're in big trouble. Like, look how out on their feet England were against Colombia in the first half of extra time last week or this week. So, yeah, it's a good point from Southgate. England would be one of the last squads I would expect that to happen to. There is that collective mentality there, which would suggest that they are thinking about the result. They are thinking about what is best for the squad.
I don't know, you can't cater for the individual though. And you might be thinking to yourself, I will never play in a World Cup quarter-final again. I'll never have the chance to qualify for a World Cup semi-final. If I think I can get through this, and it maybe just involves popping a pill or two, or maybe getting an injection, and although if you have to go to the extent of getting an injection, obviously the physios are going to be discussing with your manager, but you do everything you could to play in it.
Yeah, no question about that.
And if you think, I'm going to be okay. You know, I back myself to be able to get through this. Then it breaks down, well then you've kind of made a mistake, but it may not go that way. You may actually be able to play and get through it. And down and out, defending champion Muguruza is the latest big name to fall at Wimbledon. That is the front page of the Daily Telegraph Sport. And the line at the top, Sweden plan to target England's back three. They're not very skilled and may struggle under pressure. Ooh. That's the Swedish line of the likes of John Stones, Kyle Walker and Harry Maguire.
Tough words there about England. We are going to be chatting England a little bit later with Kevin Kilbane. We do have football coming your way right now, I do suspect, because I'm starting to hear something. I'm starting to hear that beloved tune of ours, the unknown Russian tune, which was probably just ripped off YouTube and given a little bit of a different pitch. I don't know the name of it. It's not the Kalinka, it's something else. That must be John Duggan's on the line. A very good morning to you, John.
Morning, Dave. How are you doing? I pulled out all the stops this morning, guys. This is a tube taker, which I think is a hat that you have in Kazan here. We're now 448 miles east of Moscow with the Kul Sharif Mosque behind me. And this is a beautiful part of the world in Kazan, the Tatar region, the Turkic ethnicity. And we're kind of in we're moving towards the Asian part of Eurasia. Of course, it's not just a European World Cup, it's a Eurasian World Cup with Russia hosting it. The biggest country in the world.
That is amazing. Like that hat, I'd read about the Kul Sharif Mosque, and I was prepared to see how impressive it was. But your hat has outdone one of the most famous mosques in the world, John, I must say.
Well, that's great. That's great. I mean, we might try and get it into the pubs of Dingle. We'll see how we got on. But beautiful day here for Brazil and Belgium later on this evening at the Kazan Arena, and then of course it's England, Sweden down the road in Samara. Well, a few hundred miles down the road in Samara tomorrow. So nice and sunny, nice and hot. It'll be hotter in Samara than it is here, but yeah, Brazil, Belgium. I mean, this is going to be this could be almost like a World Cup final and a quarter final. What a game to look forward to.
Does it feel like a festival of football in Kazan at the moment? Have the Belgians and Brazilians travelling their numbers? Was there any actually on your sleeper train down to Kazan?
No, it was pretty quiet on the sleeper train to equate with the word. I don't know whether they house journalists in the same carriage or something, but no fans in my carriage, and that's been the way in the other trips that I've had. So we got through the sleep. Felt I was in an airplane at times, and then you realise you're actually on land. So that you get the half sleep, and I always look for a McDonald's. Is there a McDonald's near a train station, and just have a McDonald's breakfast, because you can't be worrying about just get something into you. But a few Brazilians, a few English actually, maybe the English felt they would be coming here. Maybe they felt they might top the group and be coming here, or maybe some of them are taking in today before going out to Samara tomorrow. So a few English, a few Brazilians, a few Belgians, a few Russians. I've seen a couple of Japanese as well, so maybe people are staying on, but quite a light touch so far to the support, but that'll change obviously later on. About a 45,000 capacity stadium this evening.
Just judging by the bit of the sky we can see above your head there, John, it looks like it's going to be a scorcher there this evening.
It is, yeah, and I think Kevin De Bruyne was struggling a little bit in the heat the other night, if you could see him in Rostov, but look, I think these teams are pretty much acclimatised to what they're going to face tonight. Obviously the Brazilians, it'll suit them a little bit more, but neither team has really exerted themselves so far, so I don't think it's going to be a factor. It could be a factor tomorrow for England and Sweden, but I don't think it'll be a factor. It could be a factor for Croatia down in Sochi. They're really playing an away game tomorrow night against the hosts, but not going to be a factor this evening, I don't think.
There's been a bit of mind games going on ahead of this game, John. I'm not sure if you'd agree, but just looking at Roberto Martinez's comments the other day, talking about things like this is a game that we're big underdogs for. Nobody expects us to go through to the semi-finals, whereas the line from Vincent Kompany has been very strong. It's like it's now or never for this Belgium team. We have to win this game, and nobody expects us to lose. Whereas Martinez is saying the very opposite. So I can only imagine it's just trying to build up the Brazilian confidence and trying to put themselves into a very heavy underdog position.
I wonder, is anybody even thinking about what the managers of the players say at this stage of it? I think the players just know themselves. Martinez, I don't know how he feels about Adnan Januzaj scoring that goal against England. When you look at the draw, I mean, the Belgium, Brazil, France, Uruguay, they'd be confident before them that they could take anybody else on the other side of the draw. And now you have a situation where Brazil and Belgium, neither team can really afford to lose it. Brazil can't really afford to lose it because this is meant to be the redemption World Cup after the 7-1 defeat in the semi-final. They've been great under Tichy, 19 clean sheets in 25 games, only conceded a goal this tournament, great in qualifying. But they're Brazil, and like Harry in Gaelic football or Dublin, they're expected to win tournaments, and they're expected to win this World Cup. And for Neymar, for Coutinho, for all of these quality players, they're expected to win tonight. And they've been comfortable so far. They play within themselves. For Belgium, once again, they're expected to win. They're expected to be the golden generation that actually gets the gold and not goes out of the quarter-final stage. They've only reached one semi-final in their history, 1986. And with players like De Bruyne, like Hazard, like Lukaku, great players, they'd be expecting that they're going to go further in the competition. In terms of what I expect tonight, I don't know about this Belgian setup. I don't know what you guys thought in the Japan game, but I think there's passengers in this Belgian team. That's my personal opinion. I think the 3-5-2, I'm not sure if it works. I'm not sure if it's going to work with Marcelo back in the Brazilian team tonight, Neymar down the left. We have... I'm not sure about Axel Witsel. I'm not sure about Carrasco, Meunier. I'm not sure about these players. And Kevin De Bruyne, for me, was playing too close to his defence against Japan. And he needs to be much further forward in the team. And probably the likes of Dembele and Fellaini possibly deserve a chance against this Brazilian team that could cut you apart. The way they attack and the way they are happy enough to rely on the fact that they've got a very good defensive record, they're very solid defensive. Fernandinho, of course, coming in tonight for Casemiro, who's suspended. That'll be interesting to see the likes of De Bruyne against his clubmate. But Belgium need to, maybe the underdog tag will help them. Maybe the fact that they were fancy to beat Japan maybe engineered a bit of complacency. But Belgium have to play the game of their lives tonight. And from what I see, 1 to 11, there's some players in there that I worry about.
John, they're clearly trying to extol the positives from the win over Japan, and Roberto Martinez described it as, this incredible test of character which they clearly passed. But the flip side of that is that it was a truly awful performance for 65, 70 minutes, and that if they throw anything in like that tonight, they're going to lose this game heavily.
They are, Dave, and I think it was a little bit arrogant from Belgium. I think they thought they'd coast through it, and then they got caught with 2 great goals from Japan. I just worry about the flanks. And Neymar down the left, William down the right. I can just see. I would. I'm no expert in terms of Roberto Martinez or that, but I'd be considering a 4-4-2 if I was Belgium. I'd be considering having whether it's Mounier or Alderweireld on the right, maybe bringing another central defender, have Vertonghen on the left, and have the likes of Dembele and Fellaini protecting that defence. And then you have your attacking players like De Bruyne and Hazard. I don't really get this Carrasco, Mounier, Witsel axis that Belgium are using. Whereas when I look at the Brazil team, apart from maybe that transition between defence and attack, that there might not be that much cover for the holding midfielder Casemiro or Fernandinho. Generally, apart from that, they've been extremely solid defensively. Thiago Silva and Miranda are playing well together. Paulinho has returned to form, ghosted in, and then you have that three-pronged attack. Maybe Firmino might feel he should get the chance to start ahead of Jesus, who hasn't really fired yet. But we know what Brazil are going to bring. They're going to bring, they've got an extremely good coach. I think this has probably been underplayed a little bit. Chichi, he's won a Champions League in South America with Corinthians. He talks and he walks the game. We know that Gareth Southgate can talk the game, but Chichi is also walking the game, and I think he's managed Neymar very well. And the only thing I think that the only kind of question mark for Brazil is when the heat comes on, which you will either against Belgium if they get through tonight, or France or Uruguay, will there be any mental scars from what happened 4 years ago and the fact that they haven't won a World Cup since 2002?
I guess it's a good thing that Mounier is at least a clubmate of Neymar, and he will have trained against him and with them so many times. If there's any full-back that has to try and deal with them that will know any more about him, there probably isn't one in the tournament. Mounier was asked that direct question, how do you cope with him? He said, I actually don't know how, I'll just have to do my best. But if anyone has a little trick up his sleeve, it might be him.
Possibly, but Thomas Mounier wouldn't strike me as a player. I just see Neymar in the flesh. Neymar is almost unplayable. If his head is in the game, and I think his head should be in the game tonight, because he knows, after missing a semi-final 4 years ago, how important this is. And I think that all the talk about Neymar and diving and cheating and all these kind of accusations are levelled against him. I don't think there'll be much focus on that tonight. I think it's too important. It's
on a yellow card though, John, isn't he? Wonder, is that something that maybe they could target? I mean, it would be very interesting to see if there's a Roy Keane type reaction to being booked early in the game, and he takes it upon himself to drive the team forward, and this is not about me, I'm just going to do my best for the team, or whether he gets into a sulk. And if somehow Mounier could engineer a situation where Neymar's booked inside the first 5 minutes, that could be a huge moment. Yeah, I would say that's a good point, and I would say that I would say Neymar is more likely to sulk than do a Gascoigne or a Roy Keane and like a Keane against Juventus. Yeah, it's a worry, and is it fair? I don't know. After the group stage, that somebody should still be on a yellow, but I think he's more likely to sulk. And I'd love to know if Chichi has had that conversation with him. You just need to be careful, mate. Don't get involved. Fellaini would be a great player to wind him up. I don't think he's going to play from the start, but Fellaini now would be the type of player that would love to wind Neymar up. But it's a good point, and it's something that could change the focus of the game if it did happen. But Willian was good the last day, I thought, and I still think Brazil are favourites to win, because I don't think Martinez is getting the best out of this Belgium team on based on what I've seen so far, both against Wales. Well, obviously he wasn't managing then, Wilmots was, but there is that flat track bully fear about Belgium, and this will have to be the day that they prove us all wrong on that. And Japan is not enough evidence for me that they prove us wrong, that they're not flat track bullies, and that they are the golden generation.
Do you see the Kevin De Bruyne positional discussion, John, as a problem for Belgium? Do you think that, like, automatically once he's playing too deep, his attacking prowess is going to be lessened? He's not going to be creating as many clear-cut opportunities playing in that position. There's no question about that. But then there's also the problem of him sitting in a deep position, taking up a defensive position, really, like a more defensive position than he would for Manchester City, which could lead to a leakage at the back almost. It seems that it's a lose-lose situation from a Martinez position for him to be playing in such a role.
Well, if Kevin De Bruyne is criticising your tactics, which he did, which is unusual for a player so publicly against Mexico, and that he's had, I think, more assists than any other Premier League player in the last 5 seasons. Kevin De Bruyne is a brilliant attacking midfielder. He's a brilliant player, and he is the guy to pick the pass. Wouldn't England love Kevin De Bruyne in their team right now? And I don't understand the position he's in. I don't understand this whole midfield Witsel De Bruyne thing at all. I think they need the Dembeles of the world in there to just protect the back four, if it's a back four, and then let De Bruyne and Hazard do their thing. So I don't really understand it, and I'm interested to see if there'll be any changes tonight, because there's a lot of players in that Belgium second 11 that might feel that they should be in the first 11.
We do want to chat briefly about what's going to happen tomorrow, because obviously you've been immersed in the Russian culture for the last couple of weeks. We want to chat about Russia-Croatia in a moment, but before that, of course, you're going to the England match tomorrow. You're heading down to Samara, and before we get into the nuts and bolts of the game, we have to ask you if you're going to stop off in Ulyanovsk, a town that you're familiar with. I understand that your freedom of the city lasted for 24 hours, John, and it was a one-day pass to the freedom of all the wonders Ulyanovsk has to offer.
There was a contact of mine said that if I came down, they'd look after me for the day. So I wouldn't. I think this kind of freedom is a little bit overplayed. So make sure there's nothing on the Wikipedia page, lads, please. I might try and get there before next week. I won't be able to get there tomorrow because it's a 6 or 7 hour drive from Kazan to Samara, and I've got to get back as well. So wouldn't be planning to go to Samara unless England were in it. But no, I won't be stopping off at Lenin's birthplace just yet, but hopefully by the time I get back to Ireland I will have seen it.
Well, one day, John, one day. I know you haven't got there yet, obviously, but is there big crowds expected from an England perspective to get their flight from the UK to Samara for this weekend? It seems that people like yourself and or most of the press corps over there have really been enjoying themselves over in Russia and have said it's okay, you can travel to Russia, everything's going to be fine. So English people with a bit of money, I'd assume, have hopped on a plane this weekend to go to Samara.
Well, they need a bit of money, first of all. I think it was £700 they were quoting for tickets. It's not the biggest stadium, about 44,000 capacity. Obviously, they have Sweden fans as well. Getting fan IDs, all that, visas, all this kind of stuff is a bit of a chore. But it's been a fantastic place, Russia. I think I saw somebody on Twitter saying back from Russia, hadn't been attacked by bears, haven't been poisoned, nothing has gone wrong. And it's somebody, an English fan on Twitter, and it was it's a beautiful, hospitable place. It's just a fantastic country. So that's my experience of it. Maybe it is a Potemkin village, but I think the country is too vast for it to be like that. Of course, it's a huge police presence. Control can work in a positive and a negative way in any country. But if any England fan is considering going over, get over here. This is the World Cup quarter-final. It's 12 years since you've had one. You've never had a better chance. I think England are going to reach the final, lads. Don't think they're going to win the World Cup. I think surely somebody on the other side of the draw will win the World Cup. But I think Sweden are the best team they could face. The best team they could face. Not that pacey, like other teams to have the ball. They've had 36% possession of the tournament, greater than some of their parts. But I think for England, who like to have the ball, I think Sweden are the best team they could face tomorrow. So I'd hope to see more England fans than I saw against Colombia and that I saw against Panama and Nizhny Novgorod. Obviously, see by the television figures over there, 25 million people watching the matches, that it's great. And that's why the World Cup has to stay on terrestrial television, because there is no greater show on earth like it. And that has been the experience that I've tasted so far. And I hope that the England fans find a way to Samara tomorrow.
Since you're saying that England are going to reach the final, John, you seem to have changed your view a small bit on Croatia. You felt that they were the most impressive side in the group stages, and has that performance against Denmark really hampered their chances in your view?
No, I wouldn't have said. I don't think I said that they were the most impressive side in the group stages. I think Brazil have always been my tip, and I felt that they're best team in the group stages. I think Croatia played very well in the group stages. I think it's more of a gut feeling about England that I have. I wouldn't be surprised if Croatia reached the final, but against Nigeria, Croatia didn't have a shot on goal to the 71st minute. Against Argentina, they were slightly flattered by the fact that Argentina are a mess. They did make 9 changes against Iceland and win. That was impressive. Denmark, though, are a team that frustrates. Denmark are a hard team to play against. And Croatia found it difficult, especially in the second half. But they had a chance to win the game in normal time. They didn't, and then they won it in penalties. So I think with Croatia, people are saying that they're the most impressive team or this or that. They're a very good team, but they're not that many young players. They've got Remi Rebic, their right winger, who could really make an impact tomorrow. He's been playing well. And Brozovic in the centre of the midfield. I think they're 23 and 25 respectively. Apart from that, you've got Rakitic and Modric in their 30s, Mandzukic in his 30s, Perisic is 29. Not a young team. Good team at Euros, beat Spain. We're unlucky against Portugal. Can see them in the final. But I just got a feeling that England might go the whole way to the final. That's just a good feeling. It's not really based on logic. It's based on gut.
John, do you see Gareth Southgate making any changes? Really, maybe the presence of Sterling in the team is probably the only source of debate, whether a Rashford, for example, should be in from the start. My gut would tell me that he'll go with the same 11, but what are your thoughts on it?
I would say he will go with the same 11. I would agree that what England lack is creativity. I think we all know that they lack a. I don't even want to say whether Jack Wilshere is the answer or not. But they lack a Gascoigne, they lack someone to prise open a defence. And I think only, apart from of the 9 goals I think they've scored, and they scored 9 in the tournament, I think only 2 of them have come from open play. Harry Kane has got 2 from corners, a couple of penalties. So that will concern me about England, but I think against Sweden they'll be okay with that. Sterling, lively, he was moving around a lot against Colombia, but I think he petered out. He spluttered out to me a bit. Rashford, I think he's very pacey. I think he suits playing with Kane better, but I wasn't that impressed with Rashford against Belgium in the game I saw in Kaliningrad. He should have scored that chance, and he needs to be putting these away. To be fair, he did put away the penalty the other night. It was well took, but yeah, I can't really see Southgate deviating from the 3-5-2. They know they're obviously very well organised. They've been practicing penalties this March. We see with set pieces and Trippier's influence how well they've been doing from those kind of balls. So everything is. I think England are doing as much as they can, but it's just that lack of creative spark. They need to be creating more chances and taking more chances in open play. But once again, as I said, I don't think Sweden. I think Sweden are going to really hurt them. I just can't. Hitting England on the counter. I don't know. I don't know whether Toivonen and Marcus Berger are going to take England apart. Can't really see it. I think Sweden are a team that I thought struggled against Germany in the last 20-30 minutes, and Mexico might have just shot their bolt a bit, having the euphoria and like the Giant Stadium almost euphoria. Remember when we beat Italy at the Giant Stadium? We were never really the same in that tournament, and maybe Mexico were like that after the Germany game. Biggest win possibly in their lives away from home.
Given that it is Sweden, though, John, do you think there is a little bit of potential still for this to go sour for them? Like if they were playing a Brazil or a France or a Germany or a Spain in the last 8, all expectation levels would have plummeted after the win over Colombia, and they would be considered by most England supporters and the media to be in bonus territory right now, regardless of what happens in the game. But because it's Sweden, if they go home on the back of a last 8 defeat to them, and it's Sweden are actually in the last 4, and probably the greatest opportunity since Italia 90 just frittered away, that it actually could turn sour on Southgate and the players.
I don't think so. I think they've just got over the bridge, Dave. I think they were over the bridge in the honeymoon because of their recent tournaments, because of Iceland, and because of the World Cup in 2014, they didn't even get out of the group, and because I think people realise this is a young team, and they've got people like Maitland-Niles coming in the next 2 years, and Sessegnon, and a really good underage structure. So I think that they get the benefit of the doubt. I know what you're saying, that this is the best chance that they've had. But what actually I think will help them, lads, is the way the Colombia game transpired. If they'd won 1-0, if Yerry Mina hadn't headed in that goal, they wouldn't have been tested, because they were really struggling after that goal went in for the first 10 minutes of extra time. But then they rallied, they had a couple of chances. They should have won the game in extra time, either Rose or Dyer, and then they won on penalties. I think that'll give them huge confidence. And I'd expect them to get through tomorrow. I'm pretty confident that England will get through tomorrow. If they don't, I still think on the benefit of the doubt, I think there'll be enough goodwill there with England for the feel-good factor to continue. But I know what you're saying.
Well, listen, John, a safe journey down to Samara this evening or tomorrow, whenever you're travelling. And there's tons of comments coming in complimenting you on your hat. So congratulations on your fashion decision this morning. Enjoy Kazan, and we'll chat to you again on Monday.
Can't wait for Brazil, Belgium, lads. Enjoy the day.
John Duggan there, our man in Russia.
I'm hugely envious of the journey, emotionally, psychologically, and literally, that he's been on.
In a fashion sense as well. He's been on a journey in a fashion sense.
He has.
Started with a Bolshevik hat and has now ended up with a hat that you might find more in Mongolia or Kazakhstan. It's amazing. It's really, his fashion choices have really epitomised what Russia is all about.
But he has embraced the varied cultures that encapsulate Russia from west to east in a huge way.
He hasn't had any vodka though.
No, he hasn't had any alcohol whatsoever.
No alcohol whatsoever, yeah.
Which I certainly was taken aback by that. I admire it. I know a lot of our listeners were very in admiration of John's abstinence. But I think he's just so in touch by the magnitude of the stage he's on. He doesn't want it blurred in any way by any intoxicants.
Yeah,
He wants this to be the most perfect, pure and natural experience of his life.
Well, it's been a perfect, pure, natural experience for all of us watching you as well, John. We will be chatting to John again on Monday and actually on World Cup Daily this afternoon from the earlier time of midday. We will be chatting to Kevin Kilbane as well before we wrap up this morning on OTB AM at around 9 AM. He'll be chatting about England, he'll be chatting about today's games and maybe a little bit on that Russia-Croatia match as well. But for the time being, we're going to switch back to golf and go back up to the Dubai duty-free Irish Open. Joe Malloy was chatting to Shane Lowry on Wednesday, and the setting for their interview was pretty interesting. They walked the first hole together.
So, how's your form? How's your mood? Because I read the transcript of your press conference yesterday.
It was a bit miserable, wasn't it?
It did strike me that, you know...
I left it afterwards, and I had to do an interview afterwards with Greg Allen, and I said to Greg, you know what, that was a bit miserable, and I feel a bit miserable after leaving there. So, I mean, I thought some of the questions were a bit... I could have asked them myself. You know, to be honest, I could have nearly said myself what I was going to be asked when I went in. If that's kind of.
So what's the common thread of the question? If people didn't see your transcript,
yes, people are wondering why, you know, things are not going well. Do you need to change something? How are you getting on in America? All this type of stuff is just the same thing. Like, it's
what's wrong was the general.
Yeah, basically what's wrong. And I said to him, listen, if I knew what was wrong, I wouldn't be here sitting talking like this. So and if I knew how to fix it, I wouldn't. But, like, I mean, I'm not. Yeah, they're talking about my drop down the world rankings and talking about all that, but I'm not alarmed.
Does that bother you? And for casual golf fans, we should say a good week or two, a win particularly, the golf rankings can be volatile. You can shoot back up.
But the golf is volatile. Like I said to Nathan this morning, I said, like, if I'm sitting in this studio next Monday with the Irish Open, all of a sudden people just forget about the last 2 years. They just forget.
Yeah, Shane Lowry there speaking to Joe on Wednesday at the Pro-Am at Ballyliffin. You can catch that full piece. It's definitely worth your time on youtube.com/off the ball. Now, we want to come back to a story we mentioned earlier on in the newspapers. It was carried on the front page of the Irish Independent this morning and in a good few other places, because the news came out that the death of Luke O'Brien May from Grange in Kilmallock in County Limerick, who died last year at the age of 18. He played rugby, football, hurling and basketball, was sitting his leaving cert when he passed away, and it has emerged that it was drugs related, down to performance enhancing drugs, specifically the drugs stanozolol, which you may be familiar with because it was the drug that Ben Johnson tested positive for during the Olympics in 1996, or in Seoul, I should say, in 1988. So it's taken the whole idea of performance enhancing drugs and brought it into a far more worrying sense of the term, that they're not just kind of a substance you can take, and the biggest peril at your risk is the fact that you might get caught or you might get banned for your sport. There's clearly a very real risk to the lives of young people. Just to give you a bit of detail on what was said, CUH medic Dr. Robert Plant and assistant state pathologist Dr. Margaret Bolster, they said that on the balance of probabilities he developed a swelling on the brain as a result of the use of the steroid, and the coroner Philip Cummin has warned that the health risks involved in taking the steroids, because most of them are obtained illegally, you don't know what you're taking, you don't know what's going into your system. And he also pointed out, interestingly, that a lot of these steroids and a lot of these performance enhancing drugs are actually addictive. So it just paints this whole picture of an unbelievably grim nature, a black market, and essentially the desperate need for more education around these performance enhancing drugs. Because it might be just me, and it might be just me who's saying this, but honestly, when you think performance enhancing drugs and you think of this specific drug, you think Ben Johnson, you think of getting popped, and you think that that's the worst that can happen to you. It's clearly not.
Yeah, well, I guess if you look at the history of cycling in particular, the number of athletes that have died prematurely in the last 25 years, the most obvious of which is Pantani. And so there's very much out there, a lot of evidence that sustained abuse of performance enhancing drugs and steroids in particular can lead to difficulties with your heart, with your lungs, with your liver. And in this case, in this tragic case of this teenager, there was a swelling of the brain that the coroner believes led to his passing. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely, you can never have too much education around these things, but there definitely have been stories over the years. We've also seen it in professional wrestling over the last 25, 30 years. The amount of guys have died from heart failure in their 40s, and often that has been linked to an abuse of steroids over the course of their careers. And so I do think people they would take certain things, and they know that there must be some risk involved, some risk that weighs whether or not I'm going to get done by the dope testers if they happen to knock on our door, on the dressing room door at any given stage.
But the thing is, when it comes to the education, it's probably, once you're further down your career path, if you're a professional athlete, or your amateur path, if you're an amateur athlete, if you're performing in the GAA, that's when the education starts to come in. Like, you don't get tested, you're not subject to WADA code until you're 18 years old, and there's nothing to say that this sort of stuff doesn't appeal to teenagers, that it doesn't appeal to people under the age of 18. And like, ultimately they're the people who are most at risk of this sort of stuff, because they haven't had the risk of getting caught, they aren't getting tested, and it kind of brings into play this whole idea of body image, or trying to succeed to make development squads, or whatever it is, this inherent pressure that is surrounding kind of the competitive nature of underage sport. And as a result, there's a lack of getting caught, which is the ultimate downfall in some people's eyes. You leave yourself open to this tragic risk, and it's an awful story. It's like, when you talk about how prevalent this might be, it's depressing to look at some of the figures, because obviously there's been a lot of people on the record talking about this over the last 24 hours. The Health Products Regulatory Authority has gone on to say that there was a 4-fold increase to almost 500,000 medicines with steroids detained in 2017. The number of detained products in 2016 was 109,000. So obviously that's just the number of detained products. There's nothing to suggest that there's more of the products on this island now.
Yeah, we've no idea what percentage of the total that would have been brought into the country this number is, whether it's a fraction of it, or whether they actually are being very successful in intercepting a lot of the stuff that's coming in. But you're right, particularly young men of the age of this kid, they're at their most vulnerable. They would not have been educated to the point that people who are subject to the WADA code would have been. And I see it, I mean, you know, it's mentioned enough on this bloody show that I tend to frequent the gym from time to time, but I see it when I'm in the gym. I see guys who are way too big, far bigger than they should be for their physique, and you can tell that there's stuff being taken that is not going to have a beneficial effect on their bodies in the long term. And you look at them and you wonder what sort of a path have they gone down, and what sort of damage are they potentially doing to their insides, to their organs, and will that lead to some major issues in their 30s, 40s or 50s. But this is such a health warning. This is proof that it can happen at a very young age. And the other thing is, maybe kids like this guy, or, you know, maybe young men in general, when you're at that age, you feel like you're invincible, and that you've got your whole life ahead of you. Nothing could possibly damage me physically in any way, because, you know, I'm fit, I'm healthy, I'm full of life. And you do have this feeling of invincibility. It maybe manifests itself in the way maybe some kids might drive, that, you know, you can handle the car, you can do whatever you want in the car, but, you know, I am invincible. Nothing of something like this can befall me. It's tragic for his family, and the only possible sense of a silver lining you might get from a tragic case like this is that it is just a wake-up call for anybody else, not just younger people, but of any age, that are taking something like this, that this is how badly wrong it can go.
Yeah, like the big solution to, or the way to kind of stem the tide of this, or to stop this ever happening again, is, as we mentioned, education. And the GAA and the IRFU are on record on the story in the Irish Independent this morning. The GAA saying that they'll have anti-doping tutors in every county from next year, which is a very positive step. As you mentioned, players over the age of 18 are subject to WADA code under the GAA. The IRFU says it has a strong anti-doping stance and a proven track record in both education and testing. The IRFU says it targets schools, I'm quoting from the Indo again, targets schools and clubs with info packs and leaflets saying there is a mandatory anti-doping education for all representative underage players in Ireland, and targeted testing of young players on the path to professional rugby. Well, ultimately, when you put it into this sort of perspective, it's the education that's more important than the testing. We can moan all day about failed tests and people who've kind of failed tests and because they went in search of performance enhancement, but people who are really damaging their quality of life, or in the case of Luke O'Brien-May, the most tragic circumstance of all, that's where it's preventative measures. It's not the failed tests that sort of give you some sort of encouragement, which they do at top level sport. It is the education. And like as you say, that is the one silver line that comes out of this, but it is a completely tragic story. It's
not all about performance enhancement though, is it? It's about body image as well, and it's about being able to lift heavier, lift bigger, to look bigger, to look leaner, to reduce your body fat percentage, and doing it in a chemical induced or an artificial way, which is not the way the body was designed.
No.
And we don't know what the reasons for the drug's been taken in this particular case, but I mean that's irrelevant really, because I mean he's paid the ultimate price and his family have paid the ultimate price. But in general terms, it's in the absence of dope testing, which isn't something that if you're just trying to lean up by going to the gym, you may not be playing sport at any kind of an elite level or a high level. You have to think about the consequences beyond the testers. That this can have a real long-standing, sustained physical harm on your body, and that's something that absolutely has to be taken into consideration. I know the GAA are making major moves in that regard as well by having anti-doping tutors at nearly every GAA club across the country, and they will be telling kids, look, it's actually not just about you getting caught and being banned and having your reputation torn to shreds. You could actually be doing yourself serious physical harm at the same time.
The most, and this is kind of like a bit of a tangent, the most depressing sort of element of all of this is I believe Barry Bonds is having his jersey retired when the San Francisco Giants, isn't it, take to the diamond later on this year. And of course one of the drugs that Barry Bonds is linked with is stanozolol as well, and look how his life's turned out pretty well, is what you would say. And it's
and it's only a matter of time before, I think is this year 4 or 5 where he's eligible for the Hall of Fame. It's only a matter of time before Barry Bonds is
maybe it's the Hall of Fame induction I'm thinking of. I just saw a story there, but Bonds and Ben Johnson are the two big athletes, and there is almost a glamour associated to it at that point, which is another hugely damaging element. But as we say, there is efforts being made to educate young people better in this regard. There is going to be a lot of talk about this, you'd imagine, over the next couple of days and weeks. We'll do more on it and off the ball as well about the whole bigger is better attitude. We do want to turn back to golf. We will be going to the World Cup and chatting to Kilbane in a moment, but just back to Ballyliffin for a moment. Here's Graham McDowell speaking to Off the Ball about his desire to do well on home turf.
Yeah, it means a lot, of course it does. I mean, you know, obviously I'm very passionate about this tournament. Maybe not quite as intense about it as I maybe was 10 years ago. A little bit more relaxed coming in. You know, just see it as another opportunity like we talked about. But listen, my family and friends out there in the crowd, of course I want to be here in the mix for the weekend. And you know, like we always talk about every year at the Irish Open, I'd love to win one of these before it's all said and done. And you know, links golf course like this, very similar to where I grew up, you know, there's no reason why I can't compete this weekend.
You spoke yesterday, Graham, about warning the club members that maybe they might get as low as 20 under par here, and not to be upset if it does. Do you still think that maybe a winning score, that's the sort of number you're going to have to get to?
You know, to be honest with you, talking to guys that played in the afternoon yesterday, they felt like it was a little trickier. When this afternoon breeze gets up and this golf course continues to dry out, you know, perhaps I overwarned them. You know, I still think it's going to be teens required to win this tournament. But I think with the colder, wetter start this morning, I think it maybe took a little bit of the sting out of the golf course. Made it a little trickier for guys starting out. But I don't know. I'll be interested. I'm glad I've kind of warned them on that angle. You know, and now 20 under, they're not going to be too upset if they see that. But I'll be interested to see what the boys do this afternoon. I mean, obviously the weather has improved a lot since this morning. See if this afternoon breeze kicks up, which it has done every afternoon. But you know, 20 under might win by 5.
Yeah, Graham McDowell there speaking after his first round at the Dubai Duty Free Irish Open up in Ballyliffin yesterday. Just to bring you up to speed on what's actually happening this morning, a couple of early movers, including Lee Westwood on the course early. He's birdied the first to bring him to 5 under par, level with Ryan Fox and Joakim Lagergren. The Swedish golfer Lagergren is 2 under through 3 holes to also bring him to 5 under. Padraig Harrington is best of the Irish. He's on 4 under par. He tees off at 1:30 this afternoon. Rory McIlroy's 2 shots further back. He is through 2 at the moment and is par for his round. He's 2 under par. Graham McDowell tees off at 1:20 this afternoon. He's on 1 under par. And then you've got a host of Irish golfers, including Shane Lowry on level par, who's also on the course at the moment. He has just parred the first. We're going to get to Kevin Kilbane in just a moment. But Dave, like looking ahead to what it's going to be an unbelievable evening of World Cup football. Like we I'm guilty for it, you're guilty for it, we're all guilty for it. You're a Champions League commentator, so you tar the international game with this brush of badness, that the international game is crap, that Champions League football is where it's at.
I don't.
Except for tonight.
I don't do that.
Well, I just assumed you did.
You've just lumped me in there.
I assumed you were protective of your child that is the Champions League.
I'm also a Premier League commentator, and I see an awful lot of rubbish in the Premier League as well. So yes, there's a lot of international football that is painful to watch, but this is not in that bracket. Uruguay, France, Brazil, Belgium, these are just huge games with world-class players sprinkled across all 4 teams. And these 2 games, I don't know if the Uruguay-France game will be a classic, because any game involving Uruguay doesn't tend to be a classic in the purest sense of the word, but they have some brilliant footballers. I love the Uruguay defenders and the way that they play, so there's an awful lot to be admired there. Brazil-Belgium could potentially be a classic, despite the fact that the Brazil defence is so stingy. Just 1 goal conceded in the tournament, and as John said, 19 clean sheets in the last 25 internationals. You don't normally associate a Brazilian side with that kind of stubbornness and meanness in defence, and then up against the side that scored more goals than anybody else. That could be one of the great World Cup quarterfinals, that if kids 20 years from now or 25 years from now are putting together whatever the virtual reality equivalent will be of World Cup 90 ring binder that I painstakingly put so many hours into 28 years ago, this is the game. There was a section in World Cup 90, and you got an addition to it every week called Great Games. And there were a few games involving Brazil, particularly from the 1986 World Cup. The quarter-final against France in particular stood out, that I'd never heard of before. There was no YouTube back then. That was one of the great games. This could be one of the great games that the people are talking about 20, 25 years from now. Yeah.
We are having a bit of trouble establishing connection with Kevin Kilbane over in Russia. We will get to him, I promise, before the end of the show. So we're just going to turn our attention to the weekend's Gaelic Games action. Of course, 4 huge round 4 qualifiers in football, and then of course the Leinster hurling final replay in Thurles on Sunday at 3 o'clock. We'll start with the football, Dave. You're in Portlaoise tomorrow for Cork v Tyrone.
Yeah, I'm doing Cork Tyrone for Sky, but I'll also be there for the first game. I'll be covering a lot of that for Off the Ball. Roscommon against Armagh. The Cork team was named yesterday evening, actually yesterday afternoon, because I was in the midst of just doing some prep for it, and then the team landed, which was a lovely little bonus just to get that boxed off. 5 changes in total. Probably doesn't surprise you, given how dreadful, pathetic is probably the word I would use, they were against Kerry outside of the first 10 minutes. And tomorrow we will see if this Cork team have anything about them at all.
Yeah.
Because I think you could have put a Carlow or a Fermanagh or a Laois into that Munster final, and they would have performed far better than Cork did. They would have shown far more backbone. They wouldn't have got the hiding that Cork eventually got from Kerry, albeit they all would have been beaten by Kerry and probably beaten heavily, but not in the manner in which the Cork team were. So I'm not surprised that Ronald McCarthy's seen it fit to make changes, the most significant of which is that Aidan Walsh has been dropped.
There is often a Cork backlash, and it's very hard to call which way it's going to go. Will it be the 2015 situation where they should have beaten Kerry and Killarney, it goes to a replay, and then they lose to Kildare, who conceded 7 goals to Kerry then subsequently? So that was a disaster. That
I was commentating on that game as well, and that was a really bad night for them.
But then you look at last year when they got hockeyed almost as bad as they did a couple of weeks ago in the Munster final, and they came back and could have beaten Mayo. So they've also got the extra week's rest.
Yeah, 2016 as well, where they played in a thriller against Mayo in the All-Ireland quarter-final. Or is that 2014?
That was last year.
Sorry. No, that was in a qualifier.
Sorry,
2014. They were in a thriller with Mayo as well, having lost the Munster final. And they showed how they can bounce back that day. Even going back to 2013, I know we're edging closer to the All-Ireland champions of 2010, but they really made Dublin work for their All-Ireland quarter-final win in 2013 as well. But you're right, they were very good in that game last year, and the 2 goals really were crucial, and that kept them in the game against Mayo, and they probably should have won the match. So are they going to get something similar to this? But this was their worst defeat to Kerry in 80 years. They have not been in this position where they have just been cleaned out to that extent. Now he's shaking it up. Brian Hurley is starting a championship match for the first time in 2 years. He's had chronic hamstring trouble for the last 18 months. His brother Michael is in the full forward line as well. It's the first time the 2 of them ever started a championship game together. And James Lockery's been brought back into the full back line now. I'm not sure if he'll play in that position, but he's really experienced, gritty, warrior-like type player, as Antrim supporters will tell you. So I think it's a far more gnarly-looking Cork team than the one that started the Munster final.
Sean Kavanagh changed his tune to a certain extent on Tyrone on the Sunday game last week. He kind of maybe overcompensated a little bit and said they're the best team in the country in transition, the best team on the counter, the best counter-attacking team in the country, which is a big statement, but I think he kind of narrowed it down and pigeonholed them into the best transition team really after that. Like,
what game was he making his comments after, though? The Cavan match.
Yeah.
Yes, in which Cavan politely played in exactly the way the Tyrone. It was. I said to somebody at the Munster hurling final on Sunday, they'd seen that I was doing the commentary for Sky on the Saturday, and they said, like, what was it like? And I said, it was like the two teams met for lunch before the game. And Tyrone said, look, lads, you wouldn't set up like this, would you? Go on, so we will. And that's what Cavan did. And they just played into Tyrone's hands for pretty much the entirety of the game, which it was as naive a performance, particularly in the first half, as I've seen from a Division 1 team, which Cavan now are, in an awful long time. And they made the Tyrone counter-attacking / transition game look like it was the be-all and end-all, like it was as good as any team that plays that way in the country. It is not that good. It was made look that good by a really naive Cavan side. So Cork will have watched that game, and the one thing you do know is that if you can't, Tyrone will let you have the ball all the way to their 45, then they'll hit you and they'll take it off you. They'll counter-attack at pace, they'll get guys up with the ball, and they picked off a whole pile of scores against Cavan in that manner. If Cork play that way tomorrow, you'll have to lambast them. You will have to question their preparation. You'll have to question their ability to think during the game, but before the game. I really don't think Cork are going to be that naive. And Cork are a big physical team. I don't think they're going to get turned over as easily as Cavan were in the ball. Like, the mental little hands in the tackle that Tyrone got in, flick the ball away, they get down the other end of the field. And Cork have better forwards than Cavan as well, no question. So, and what I would love to see tomorrow is Aidan Walsh, a frothing at the mouth Aidan Walsh coming in for the last 20 minutes with a game in the mix, and slighted unbelievably by the fact that a former Footballer of the Year, an All-Star winner, an All-Ireland winner has been dropped unceremoniously from the team. He's 27. He should be at his absolute peak. I would love to see Aidan Walsh come in and turn the game tomorrow. Yeah, because he is just a thoroughbred.
He is. He was desperate against Kerry. Obviously, he's got a massive point to prove that
it really does.
He hasn't regressed.
He has not fulfilled his potential in any way, and in either code. But he has still the ability to do something special if he comes in with the right frame of mind. So I'm really looking forward to that game. Roscommon Armagh, I think, is the 50-50 game out of the round 4 qualifiers.
Yeah, we will come back to that in a moment. We'll come back to Fermanagh versus Kildare as well, which is tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and indeed the other qualifier. Unfortunately, it's not Fermanagh against Mayo, so to make up for our lack of Mayo contingent on the show, let's go over to Kevin Kilbane in Moscow, I think. Kevin, how are things?
I'm very good, Owen. Very good, yeah. All's well in Moscow.
What's the plan for the weekend? You're on the highlights show, I understand, on the box for the next couple of days.
Yeah, I got a couple of studio appearances now, and then I'm flying back on Sunday. So yeah, no more games to be at. I was due to be at the Uruguay-France game, but there was a change around, and it's difficult to get in and out of Nizhny from Moscow, so it had to change around on the planning. So basically, I'm just staying in Moscow, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, you get a good central hub and a good view of everything there in your snazzy studio for the BBC. We were just chatting there a couple of moments ago just about the constant comparisons and the constant kind of beating down of the international game, especially when you compare it to kind of the grotesque capitalism and the brilliant football we see in the Champions League, for example, week in, week out. But that's certainly not the case today. This side of the draw is showing how good it can be when you've got one heavy side of the draw, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it means more. It means more than the Champions League, and you know what I think, Dave, and you both know what I think. It does, though. It does. It means more, no matter what you think. It does. You only need to see lads crying through national anthems. You don't get that. You don't get anyone crying before a Champions League theme tune, do you? Let's be honest. So, I think we clearly know what it means to the players individually. But I think these games today is. I mean, the Uruguay-France game, it looks. I mean, and you can say it for the Belgium-Brazil game, but the Uruguay, because it is a total contrast in styles, this one, and you've got such a brilliantly balanced team with Uruguay who do everything. They just do everything right. They've got that little bit of class up front. They've got that solidity defensively. Who actually love and enjoy defending. To contrast that with the France style, who France just if you play open and attacking against France, they'll do to you what they did against Argentina. So that game probably intrigues me a lot more than the other three quarterfinals, should I say here. But I think that Brazil-Belgium game, I think we'll probably get a lot of attacking football in that one. That could be more of an open game, that one.
Yeah, John Duggan is going to that. He spoke a good bit about that with him earlier on, so we'll touch on that in a moment. But just on Uruguay, France, like the common perception is that Oscar Tabarez has managed to take the players he's got and make them the sum of their parts, whereas with France it can often be the opposite, that they've got an unbelievably talented squad and they don't live up to the sum of their parts eventually. Has that perception changed a lot since the Argentina game, Kev?
Yeah, it probably is. I think I think when we saw Mbappe produce the performance that he produced, I think the work rate that I think Deschamps is getting out the side as well. How many times did you see Antoine Griezmann tracking back? He was like defending in his own the corner of or near the corner flag at some stage. You know, defending crosses coming in. I think the talented players, Mbappe and Griezmann, but it's the work rate that he's getting out of them as well. I think they've got. Much as the same, I spoke about the balanced team of Uruguay. They're probably less. I'd feel they're maybe a little bit less balanced. They can be a little bit more off the cuff at times. But I think when they've got Kante playing there, when they've got Varane and Umtiti who are trying to keep keep the ship organised, I think in general they are better balanced than we've probably seen in recent times. This French team, but they're just incredibly talented, and that's what leads you to suggest they should win the game. If all being equal, France should win the game. But Uruguay simply don't play like that. They don't play by the rules. It's amazing to see this Uruguay side. They've only conceded one goal. The goal they conceded was a set piece, actually, wasn't it? But I think when you're watching them from open play, they don't look like they're going to concede, which is very different from the sides that France have faced, particularly that Argentine game, because Argentina were just so open.
It's like watching Atletico Madrid at times, Kev. And I know I'm basing that mainly on Diego Godin because he defends for Uruguay in the exact same way that he defends for Diego Simeone. And when you saw a couple of the goals that the French got against Argentina, particularly the penalty where Mbappe was able to sprint into pretty much half of the field, there's no way that Uruguay are going to be that high up the pitch, is it? That, as you said, you described, they love to defend. And France are not going to get in behind them, are they?
Well, you can't see it. If they do leave that sort of space, you know they're going to be hurt badly. But Jimenez and particularly Godin, the experience that they've got now, knowing full well, they're the sort of lads, Dave, you can imagine. They'll watch a video and they'll be going, right, he does this. The quick thinkers, they know exactly. If they get caught once, you can imagine they won't get caught again. That's basically it. The clever footballers on the pitch. So you're saying that penalty that they conceded Argentina against France, how open they were and allowing Mbappe. Mbappe would have been fouled. Simply would have been fouled before he had the chance to run that
Very
far.
True.
So he'd get the two lads in front of him, would be clipping his heels, hands up in the air, yellow card. And that's exactly how they play. There's very little space between the back four. There's very little space between, or from the back four to the midfield two that's sat in front of them. Very much an orthodox 4-4-2. How many times have we sat there and we go, you need to play three-man midfield. You've got to have three-man in midfield to counteract the quality of the better attacking sides. But they come narrow as a midfield four. They don't necessarily play open and expansive, and they deny space to the opposition, and that's how they do it. Distances, the distances that they get between each other are perfect. That is why they're so difficult to play through.
It seems like one of the terms of the World Cup has been shithousery, and the one team who haven't been indulging in any of this has been Uruguay. They've got one yellow card.
Yeah, let's wait for this game. Let's wait for this game. You can imagine what's going to happen tonight just after saying that, Owen. You look at Colombia, look at Brazil, look at the, as you say, shithousery. Look what it is annoying when you're watching it. And I think to a casual football fan or even a non-football fan, when you're just coming in and you're watching that type of bravado and all that sort of crap that's on the pitch, it puts you off the game. It does. It would if I wasn't necessarily a football fan, I'm watching that, I'd be switching off because I couldn't be arsed with it. But in general, you've got players who are a top class, and we're seeing great attacking football off the back of it. It's just you wish that the referees could be booking Neymar for the crap that he's pulling, could be booking those Colombian players for the crap that they were pulling the other night. That is what you'd want. You'd want stronger referees just to dish out a yellow card early and then trying to put it to bed. But it's happened in past tournaments and it's going to happen again.
Well, the Colombian example is very interesting because of things like how Henderson went down when he got headbutted, and in fairness, it was a swing of the head back to him, but ultimately the way this tournament is being refereed, you kind of have to join them really if you can't beat them. And like, just to read you out one of Gareth Southgate's quotes from yesterday, he was saying that maybe we're getting a bit smarter, maybe we're now playing by the rules the rest of the world are playing by. I thought there were many fouls in the game, and I don't think we conceded anywhere near the number of our opponents. If we went down, it was because we were fouled, and of course that should be given the caveat that Harry Maguire went down and he clearly wasn't fouled in that situation. Like, can you blame the English players for following the lead of Neymar and the Colombians?
Well, I personally I could blame them. You don't want to see it. You see Harry Maguire there. You know full well Harry Maguire's going down like that. It's VAR now. Even if he was given the penalty, it would have been taken off him. So you do wonder with that. You know that should be an instant booking for anyone that's doing that sort of carry on.
Didn't Maguire though, if we're being talking about this particular incident, didn't he wag the finger immediately at the referee to say that's not a pen?
Yeah, actually, good point. He did.
Like, I'm not sure we can castigate Harry Maguire.
Yeah, but why would that come into your head to start with, though, Dave, to dive over like that? He's gone looking for a penalty.
Sometimes you just go over. Sometimes you take a dive and almost halfway down you think, I'm going to get slammed for this. Look, I'm just saying it was different from some dives. Second he was onto his feet, he was wagging the finger at the referee. Now, this could be purely self-preservation, Kev. I mean, a lot of things might have gone through his mind in that split second gone, oh shit, like, I'm going to be hammered for this.
Yeah.
So he was almost still getting back up, and he was wagging the finger at the referee to say, no pen, ref. So it was slightly different to some of the other situations.
Yeah, but I'll probably take that. You're probably right what you're saying. Sometimes, yes, that can happen. Split second stuff. You've gone it. You're almost panicking in that situation. Not so much panicking, but you're getting a little bit more tense because you feel as though I'm going to get hit here. I'm almost going looking for that penalty, and there's no contact. You go over and you think, so you've got to get on with it. You run back to referee. Fair play. That's fine. I'll take that. But you're saying there in relation to what Southgate's saying. He probably recognises, Southgate, that look, lads, this is what they're going to do to you to try to get a result. We only need to look back from when England have gone out when Beckham against Simeone and little things like this that are absolutely nothing on a pitch, yet you're getting red carded for it. So it might be a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses, or trying to maybe just be a little bit more streetwise and keep up with what the people are doing around you and be a bit smarter. That's the only thing you can say on the pitch. I think Southgate has recognised that, yeah.
Speaking of shithousery, Kev, Luis Suarez is obviously going to be playing in this game, and he interests me in that he's running out of opportunities to maybe put a gloss on his World Cup legacy. It is his third tournament. 2010 in South Africa with the handball against Ghana. 2014 taking a chunk out of the shoulder of Chiellini. Like, he's pretty much left both of the previous World Cups in disgrace. He'll be 35 by the time Qatar rocks around, so you'd imagine this is the last bite of the cherry for him. And Cavani has been getting all the plaudits, all the headlines. Unintentional, I promise you. It is very interesting that, this needs to be his stage tonight. Take out one of the big guns. Show us why you're one of the best strikers in the world. Only Ronaldo and Messi have a better league scoring record in European football than he in the last 5 seasons. Just give us your take on how this game is set up for him and what he might do tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're interested to see how Cavani is, how his fitness levels are, because they've looked so good as a pairing throughout. The work rate of Suarez is phenomenal. It is. I mean, as I said before about this team being well balanced as a squad, they're probably well balanced, well drilled, but 1 to 11. But the key to how they go on press sides is with Suarez. Suarez is where he's the link, or the start of it, the start of a press, how he works. And for all his talent, for how good he's been throughout his career, he's never lost that willingness to work hard. And we've seen that happen with so many of the players, that they get to a level and that work rate just drops off ever so slightly. And season by season, it gets less and less. But not with Suarez. It's not been the case with him. So you talk about legacy, but you understand how difficult it is. We start to realise now that Lionel Messi is, in many people's eyes, he will never be considered the greatest because he probably won't win a World Cup. I don't buy it, but that is the level, that is the mantle that he's got to carry. Diego Maradona is his level. That's the way that he won a World Cup. Messi hasn't done that, so he's not as good. It's rubbish. Cristiano Ronaldo hasn't been able to produce it at a World Cup, yet he's won a Euros. He's won countless Champions Leagues. So you can't necessarily judge these top class players on what they're actually achieving at a World Cup, I don't think. But in many respects, it's in their country where they're being judged. Argentina, Uruguay, they're being judged on what they're producing at the World Cup. So they can do everything that they want for Barcelona, Real Madrid, whoever it would be. But their whole career is being judged on what they're producing at the World Cup. As you say, he has left 2 World Cups now in disgrace, Suarez. So he probably has to, in many people's eyes, and maybe in my eyes as well, he probably needs to produce a top-class performance, maybe a couple of goals in this game, get Uruguay to a semi-final, and then he can actually then maybe scratch off what's happened in the previous 2 World Cups for him.
Like, when you look at the overall picture of things and you look at the fantastic teams that are playing today and you look at the opportunity that there is for England on the opposite side of the draw, and you form this picture that not a single player left in the World Cup has ever even appeared at a World Cup final. So there's opportunities left, right and centre, and everybody's thinking, right, this is our big chance. But at the same time, you look at the likes of Belgium and you look at the likes of France, like, they can both be considered to be golden generations of footballers. And I'm sure France, after knocking Argentina out the other day, it's pretty glaring to them that a golden generation can be lost pretty quickly. Looking at the likes of Lionel Messi walking off the pitch, and he's never going to win a World Cup.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You said the Belgium are as good as anybody. We know that. That's why that Brazil game is so finely balanced. As for France, I mean, you look at Mbappe the other night and you're seeing this player who's lit up a World Cup, and you're thinking, right, well, what can this lad do now for the next 10 years? But you only need to look at Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi was producing that type of performance at 19 and 20. You'd never know where a career is going to go. So it's almost as if you've got to just grasp it while it's actually there in front of you. This is a massive chance for France. Brazil, Belgium, they'll all feel the same. Of course, on the other side of the draw, they'll all feel the same. This is a big chance to actually do something historical, and that is the whole point of it. It's so difficult to actually do that when you look at what Messi and Ronaldo have done at World Cups. This might be Mbappe's one opportunity. He may be injured when the next one comes around. Probably won't be. You hope it won't be, but maybe in his own head he has to think of it being, this is my one chance. That is maybe the thing that's maybe gets lost in it all through it all, I think.
Just before we wrap, Kev, I just want to get your take on England against Sweden tomorrow. Like, the one question I have is, how the hell have Sweden got here?
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. It is amazing. Was it Jermaine Genius described them as a championship team the other night? I think that's what I'd heard him say. I think it's probably a little bit harsh when you say that about them, but the players that they've got, if you look at the England side, realistically, there's maybe 1 or 2 that would get in the England side. England squad, you'd probably feel as well. They're not household names. That is a thing. But it's by true organisation. It's being disciplined, how they've gone about it. It was a little bit more open in the last game against Switzerland than probably the previous games had been. But they played brilliantly against Germany in the first half, maybe in the first 60 minutes before Germany. They gave them a bit of a scene to in the last 30 minutes. But that was maybe because they had something to keep hold of, so they defended a little bit deeper. But they've got 1 or 2 good players. Forsberg's a good player. Toivonen's goal that he scored against Germany was excellent as well, if you're looking at that for a little bit of class. But overall, they aren't the greatest. But if they're going to beat England and get through, it's about being solid and about doing the things that's got them into this position up to now.
It must be incredibly hard to take yourself down from the pitch where England were at after winning a penalty shootout for the first time ever in a World Cup the last day, to get them back down to the level where they're now favourites for a game. That's quite the transformation, isn't it? Like, I'm not sure, would it have been something similar after Robbie Keane scores the goal in 2002 and then suddenly you've got to get yourself back down for the final group game where you were heavy favourites for that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in general, for those lads now as well, it's about recovery, getting the body as in as good a shape as it can be, as quickly in as quick a time as possible. That's what it is. Get the rest in. The high will be with them. I doubt that they've slept. I doubt they would have slept after that game. They certainly would. I mean, it was finishing here close to midnight Russian time, so they probably wouldn't have got to sleep till all hours as it was anyway after that match. And I believe they've had a team meeting after the game trying to relive the memories and all this sort of thing. So I think what's happened is, I think that now they'll be trying to come off it. Southgate, I think, is very much, he's balanced, isn't he? Seems to me he's not got too high, he's not got too low. He knows full well, because he's been at these tournaments before. He's had big results in major tournaments, and he knows what the expectations are around his squad. So I think he's just tried to. He would have tried to bring them down slowly over the last couple of days. Try to get them up to speed again. That is the thing, because you will still need a high intensity training session to get the legs back up to speed in the time it's taken from that last penalty being taken to the first game or to the next game against Sweden. So I think he's just trying to get the side ticking back over again, get them up to speed, because the tempo that they've played in probably every one of the games that they've played, maybe not the Belgian game, you can't say, but particularly the Panama, Tunisia and the Colombia game, the tempo they started at has been exceptional. So that is what they need to try to get back into that sort of tempo again early on in the match.
John says they're going all the way to the final. What do you reckon?
Oh yeah, it's coming home, isn't it? Bloody hell! I can barely contain myself here, honestly. They've got a great chance. Croatia are the dangers for them, I feel. Let's see how Russia go on. Russia could conceivably they could go out and beat Croatia, but Croatia are the dangers. They have got top class players, and that game, I would say, probably myself in my head, I think Croatia have got better players than England. So that is probably the danger I'd feel. But once they're at that stage, the tempo that they have been playing at, they're a danger for anybody. Yeah.
Kevin, enjoy the weekend's football and a safe journey back home.
Go man. Cheers, lads. All the best.
Kevin Kilbane there, live from Moscow. He's been with us all throughout the World Cup, and we're almost at the closing stages. You're starting to get a little bit emotional about all the fantastic football we've seen over the past couple of weeks, and just clinging on to these last few days of this festival of football.
Yeah, I can't believe he's heading home Sunday. It's been brilliant. It hasn't been as brilliant for me as I say it was for you. Like the 7 p.m. kickoffs are not ideal. That is right around bedtime.
Yeah,
and really 8 o'clock is perfect, because you can just start the process at around 7 and make sure it's all done and dusted by kickoff, where it's kind of happening smack bang in the middle of the bedtime process. So
start the process. It's like you're talking like Jim Gavin in terms of fatherhood right there.
For parents of young kids, 7 o'clock is not great, but there have been so many brilliant games.
Yeah.
And I'd spend a lot of the following day going back and watching the 3-4 minute YouTube highlights package just to make sure you haven't missed anything, because there's an awful lot of the 2010 and 2014 World Cups that it has no place in my memory bank. I can't remember.
Right.
It's just
GAA games.
I think it was due to GAA, and things change in your life and your priorities change. You don't get to watch every game religiously like you would have done when you were younger. But it's a bit easier nowadays, because you can go back and watch things so readily. But it's probably been the best World Cup in the last 20 years for me.
Yeah.
Really going back to maybe World Cup 98, which I really enjoyed. 2002 was great, obviously, because we were in it. But and even 2006 was a very good World Cup. But none of them compared to this one. We've just had so many goals. We've had so many stories. Big teams going out, and we're left with a really intriguing last 8.
Who's going to be the semi-finalists?
Well, I think England are a better team than Sweden.
Yeah.
And they're better players, so for me, unless it's going to go to penalties and they lose a penalty shootout, I think England will get through that one. Uruguay, France, I'm not even going to call it. I just think Uruguay are so defensively perfect almost. France have shown they can be vulnerable as well. They did concede 3 to a bang average Argentinian team in the last game. So France's firepower might just get them through it. Brazil, Belgium, I don't trust Belgium at all. We're talking about them as being golden generation. Well, they've shown nothing to make me believe that they're going to fulfill this golden generation tag. So I think Brazil are going to get through that game. And Croatia, I think we'll get to the semi-finals as well.
Right, okay. It would be like, if Belgium don't do the business tonight, this entire golden generation has never made a semi-finals of a major tournament, Euros included. It's
just like England's so-called golden generation.
Yeah.
And they had world-class players throughout their team in 2002 and 2006. To a lesser extent 2010, but 2006 in particular, that was a quality England team. And they never made a semi-final either. There are 2 or 3 really average players in that Belgian side, but they are littered with quality from back to front. But you just don't trust them.
No.
And I don't trust Lukaku as a world-class striker at all, actually. I think he's going to need 3 or 4 big chances before he takes one in this game. I don't think they're going to get that many opportunities against Brazil. Yeah,
well, it's going to be interesting. That is the game at 7 o'clock this evening. Wayne Ryan, just in terms of our comments that are coming in this morning, Wayne Ryan says, in general terms, lads, a coach / girl / other guys will always go for that fit guy who looks the part, and self-esteem for young people is the unspoken problem. Only an opinion, he says. Yeah, well, self-esteem is obviously a huge problem, and that's what we were kind of talking about earlier on. Not a huge problem, but the body image is a huge problem, and self-esteem is the reason why that is a problem. Man of Munster comments to say, but no mention from the IRFU about agreeing to Munster signing a convicted drugs cheat That's the real message. Just to reiterate the quote from the IRFU that we mentioned earlier on, it says it has a strong anti-doping stance and a proven track record in both education and testing, which, depending which way you look at it, is rather ironic. Christopher then commented to say, I don't get the argument that the GAA is going to lose money. They are having 4 extra games compared to last year, so no matter where Dublin play their home fixture, they're up money big time. And finally, a comment from Alan Proctor. Why is Kevin Phillips commenting on Love Island and Padraig Harrington?
That's a new one. Kevin Phillips is a new one.
It is, it's good. It's very good.
It's usually John Walters, but you know, both ex-Sunderland strikers. Didn't Walters have a spell at Sunderland as well?
Yes, I mean, all we need is an Niall Quinn lookalike, and we can kind of recreate the broadcasting team of Quinn and Phillips. That would be special. That's the next project for us here at Off the Ball. Thank you for that comment, Alan. Just to bring you up to speed on the scores in the golf. Padraig Harrington is still the best of the Irish. He's 4 under par, tees off at 1:30. Rory McIlroy is level par through 3 holes. He's still at 2 under par. Graham McDowell's on 1 under and tees off at 1:20 this afternoon. Shane Lowry is level par for his round 2 through 3, and indeed level par for the week. But we've got a new leader up atop the leaderboard. Joachim Lagergren is through 6 holes. He's 3 under par for his round so far today. He is on 6 under par for the week. He's 1 shot clear of Lee Westwood, who is 1 under through 3 for the day, 5 under for the week, which leaves him level with overnight leader Ryan Fox, the Kiwi there, who not many people had heard of over the course of his career so far. He's fairly deep into his career, but it could be a big week for him. He tees off a little bit later on this afternoon.
As far as I know, he's not exempt for the Open, so it's a massive 2 or 3 days for him.
Of course it is, yeah. It's a huge. It always has this sort of fairy tale ending. The Irish, well, it usually does have that sort of fairy tale ending where you've got this huge thing at the end where somebody can fulfil their dreams of actually playing elsewhere, which is kind of a little bit unusual to see. Of course, the last 2 years with Ram and McIlroy, it's been top end winners. So we might have the same. We might have Padraig Harrington winning out at the end of the weekend, and that would be quite the story. Here he is speaking to Off the Ball at the end of his round yesterday, where he talks about being just 1 shot off the lead.
Padraig, well done on an opening round of 68. You're currently 1 shot off the lead. How good a 68 was that?
You know, I didn't even know I was 1 shot off the lead. There you go. I thought I'd seen somebody at one stage. I don't try and look at leaderboards. I saw somebody at 6, so I just knew 4 on the par is a nice solid score. You know, you're never going to be far away with that. And this golf course, and you know, assuming we get a little bit of wind during the week, you know, 4 on the par is going to be well there, and you just keep trying to nudge a little bit forward every day. You know, certainly don't expect to shoot 4 under every day, so it's a good start to the week, keeps the momentum going.
The eagle on 17, your 8th hole, looked like it was going to kickstart your round, and then there were a couple of wayward drives around the turn. Was that the key to the birdies later on, keeping your head there where it looked like it could all go horribly wrong? Yeah, you know, I played well early on and missed a few chances, so then I played 15 badly, made a bogey, and you don't feel like you're you don't feel like you should be 1 over par, and I was 1 over par, and things are going away from you. So yeah, I took a chance down 17. I hit the driver, I got it in play, hit a decent enough second shot, but just missed the green left, and I chipped it in, which got me 1 under par. And being 1 under par, you always feel like you got something in the bank when you're under par, and you got something to work with. You feel like it's an okay day. And yeah, I hit some bad tee shots on my 9th and 10th holes. But on a links golf course, sometimes you can get away with it. I did get away with it. I scrambled to make pars, and you know, I felt pretty good about it after that. And you know, the sun came out around then, and all of a sudden you feel like you can make some birdies. When we spoke on Tuesday, and I mentioned you were 66 to 1. You had a wry smile. Now you've been out there competitively. Does this really feel like a golf course you can win on? Oh yeah, look, I would probably play 2 levels above myself on a links golf course. You know, whatever standard I'm at. You know, so if they'd factored that in the bookies, it's kind of saying that they reckoned I was playing really horrible. You know, maybe they had factored it in. That's what they'll tell you. That, you know, maybe I should have been 100 to 1 only it was a links course. But I felt like for once, not often you get value on an Irish player in Ireland. They normally obviously cut the prices, knowing that there'd be a lot of sentimental betting. But 66 to 1 on a links course did seem a little bit long.
It could seem outrageously long come the end of the week. He is 4 under par after that 68 yesterday. He tees off at 1:30 this afternoon. 2 shots off Lagergren's lead at this moment in time. Before we wrap, Dave, one other game we wanted to chat about before the end of the weekend. Cork versus Tyrone is one you're covering for TV, but on the radio tomorrow you're on Roscommon versus Armagh duty. Reports for Off the Ball?
Yeah, it's 3 o'clock Tyrone on Moore Park. Fascinating game, this one for me, because Armagh have just managed to do it again in the qualifiers. Like, to me, they're They have no standout players really. No Ulster Championship victory under Kieran McGeeney, which is astonishing, and yet his record is a 24 wins to 28 in the back door as manager of Kildare and Armagh, which is pretty spectacular. And they'll have taken so much confidence from the way that they finished that game against Clare at the Athletic Grounds a week ago. So they'll be going into this game really thinking they can beat Roscommon, albeit of the 4 beaten provincial finalists they could have drawn, I think Roscommon are the most difficult one to negotiate it. Roscommon emerged from the Connacht final with plenty of credit intact. They played pretty well against what we believe to be now a really coming Galway team. They had a couple of chances if they could just have stayed in the game a little bit more. They've had a good season and they've had plenty of time to get themselves ready for this. So Roscommon can have no excuses. It's a huge opportunity for both of these teams to reach the Super 8s. If I had to pick a winner, I'd probably just about say Roscommon. They are now a Division 1 team.
But it's a failure for them if they don't reach the Super 8s. The season as a whole is a failure.
Yeah, it probably is. Given what will they have had to have beaten to get to the Super 8s? And it just shows, despite the progress we're making structurally, it's still a farcical championship in a lot of ways, that they'll have had to have beaten Leitrim and Armagh to get to the Super 8s. Which
it's laughable, isn't it?
Is an absolute nonsense. A Division 4 and a Division 3 team by 2018 standards.
Like even Monaghan's process is sort of...
Oh, well, theirs is even more farcical.
That was just pure luck. But whereas the structure was set up that Roscommon were 2 games away from a Super 8. Well, 3 games away, really. They obviously had to go through the Connacht final, but they only had to win 2 games.
Well, look, you're going to have to play 3 games, lads. If you win 2 of them, you're going to be in the Super 8s. Yeah. One of them is going to be against the Division 4 team, at least. And Monaghan's run, is it 4 consecutive Division 4 sides that have had to have played?
3.
Waterford,
Leitrim, and now Laois.
So the less said about that, the better, to be honest, in terms of the structure. When you look at maybe what Donegal have had to do to get to the Super 8s, for example. But
what are your picks for the weekend? So Roscommon, Armagh, who are you calling?
I'll probably just, if Roscommon have prepared well over the last 3 weeks, I'll probably just go for them. But Armagh are taking a lot of momentum into this game.
What about Cork v Tyrone? You said Tyrone earlier on, did you? You were kind of leaning that way?
I'll probably lean towards Tyrone because Cork were that appalling in the Munster final. So it'll take a major bounce back for them to beat a Tyrone team that look pretty average. Like they've beaten Cavan, Carlow and Meath. None of those 3 are household names when it comes to any potential contenders. So Tyrone haven't exactly done it either, but I'd probably just side with them. Kildare Fermanagh, I think, is going to be a really tough one for Kildare to kind of come down from the enormous high of what happened in Newbridge, but you have to think the momentum they're taking to the game with them, that they should have enough for Fermanagh, who were kind of shown up for what they are by Donegal in that Ulster final.
And then I presume Monaghan are going to beat Laois in your view?
Yes, but I think Laois will put it up to them. I think Laois will have taken an awful lot from the manner in which they performed in the first half against Dublin. Laois have had a very good season, a promotion and a Leinster Championship final.
Excellent manager.
And a really good manager. A lot of good players playing well. And I think their forward line, the Kingstons, Ross Munley, if he starts, they'll give Monaghan something to think about. I don't know if they'll beat them, but I think that could be close enough.
There you go. Tyrone, Roscommon, Kildare, Monaghan are Dave McIntyre's picks for the weekend. A quick word then on Kilkenny versus Galway, the Leinster versus Connacht team taking place in Munster in a Leinster Championship final replay.
I hope it'll be a bit more open than it was last Sunday. I mean, 18 points apiece. I mean, there were more scores, weren't there, in Newbridge the previous night than there were in the Leinster hurling final on the Sunday afternoon. You always think when you're looking at replays, the team with more room for improvement should win the replay. That probably for me is just about Galway, although I think that experience will have stood to Kilkenny. So many of the young
Cody
players,
in a replay, you can never write him off.
Yeah, I think he's only lost once. That was the 2013 Leinster semi-final replay to Dublin. So I think Kilkenny will come again, but Galway will not have been pleased by the way that they played. And I'd say there have been some home truths told during the week by Micheál Donoghue and the rest of the backroom team. So I think Galway play to the potential. They win, but they're going to have to play very well. Kilkenny they're answering a lot of questions well at the moment.
Yeah, no question about that. Dave, thank you very much for your company. Whereabouts in Love Island are you now? What's coming up this evening on your
I think no, we're still around June 23rd or something.
Who's currently your favourite, what do they call them? Island member? Housemate? What do they call them? Contestant?
Love Islander.
Love Islander. Islander.
Who's my favourite? I don't know. I have a lot of time for the doctor. What's his name? Alex.
Alex.
Yeah, he seems like a genuine stand-up bloke. He's doing his best. He doesn't want to trample on anyone's toes, hurt anyone's feelings. For all I know, he's no longer there. So any of our Love Island watchers who listen to us here in the mornings are probably mocking me, thinking this guy is, I'm 3 weeks behind. So Alex may already be back in the UK. Who knows?
Who knows? There has been 2 massive twists this week. I've watched 2 episodes of it, and there has been 2 humongous twists. So once you get up to the week ending 6th of July, brace yourself, Dave. Strap yourself in, because you're in for one hell of a ride when it comes to Love Island for that week.
The Geordie lad, Adam, the tall fella.
Not a good guy.
He doesn't come across as the nicest bloke in the world. And he's not really in touch with other people's feelings.
No.
But he has just jilted the Welsh girl, Rosie.
Right, okay.
So
that's where you're at.
That's how far back I am.
Please, no spoilers on Dave McIntyre's Twitter.
Don't barrage my Twitter handle with spoilers, please.
Thank you very much for your company this morning. We are back in terms of the Off the Ball Network over the course of the afternoon. There is World Cup Daily coming up at midday, and the hurling show from 1 o'clock. Shane Stapleton and friends will be with you at 1 o'clock across all our social platforms. Back in the radio from 7 o'clock, as always, tonight, live from Ballyliffin, and there's plenty more besides over the course of the weekend. Do follow us at Off the Ball and click subscribe. We'll chat to you later. Bye-bye for now.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.